Good evening. This is the Walpole Zoning Board of Appeals. Tonight is Wednesday, June 7th. It is 7:03 PM. And with us tonight, we have Tim Hegler, Dave Anderson, Drew Delaney, Bob Fitzgerald, Mark Major, Lauren is our administrative secretary, and Patrick from the zoning board. And I'm John Lee. Okay, the first case we have is case number 23-3 for 1549 Washington Street, special permit. And is the applicant here tonight? Okay, you want to come forward and explain what you're proposing?
Good evening. Rob Truax of GLM Engineering Consultants representing the applicant. So at the last meeting, there was some conversation about the building and the location, and obviously the house numbers were an issue. So since that time, we've revised the site plan and we've modified the houses. So both houses will have a front facade that faces Washington Street. We're going to utilize the two existing driveway opens that are on the site. One is on Washington Street and one is on the side street. So we're going to utilize those openings, pretty much the same layout that's there. So each unit will have a facade front looking towards Washington. They'll both get assigned house numbers from Washington Street. So I did see some comments from the town engineer. I think they're pretty minor in nature. We are here for two applications, correct?
That's correct. One for both special permits, one under section 9.3, and the other one on 12.3C for a pre-existing non-conforming two-family dwelling that exceeds the impervious surface requirements.
Correct. So we did provide groundwater recharge for the roof runoff for the project site as well.
Okay, do you want to walk us through that? We've spent a lot of time recently on these groundwater recharges.
You're educated on them now?
No, we're not. That's why we want to hear what...
So the requirement is, they're under your regulations, under the bylaw, is to size the runoff, the recharge system to handle 1 inch of runoff over the impervious roof surface. So we've done that. We've split it up into 4 leaching chambers. They're concrete chambers surrounded by stone, putting one on each corner of the house, dividing it up into 4 equal parts. And we size that to handle the required runoff volume over the roof area. So this is the layout. So you can see this is 1 unit. Driveway's going to come out. This is the existing driveway, so we're going to utilize that opening. This is the other unit. This is going to be the front door facing Washington, so it'll get the address. But we're going to utilize the existing driveway that goes out on Stonehill Terrace. It's the way they have it set up now with 2 existing driveways. So we're going to keep those openings. Actually, probably have to do a little work and close that one up slightly. It's a little wider than we need. And we'll work with the DPW on that in the engineering department.
Okay. And the comments from engineering had to do with, the first, I think the calculations look good, but the, just wanted the updated plan. Have you
We
provided-
haven't updated the architecturals at this time, just because we wanted to get through this process before we spent the money to get full-blown architecturals and file for the building permit.
Okay,
So that you could, if you were, agreeable to approve the project, you could condition that we'll obviously provide updated architecturals to the engineer and also the building department.
but what about the roof area? Is that going to change, the roof area?
The building footprints won't change.
Okay.
They shouldn't. If they change slightly, we'll give them new calculations as well,
Okay.
just to verify it.
Okay. So I know the neighbors were very concerned about the numbering of this, and so the numbering of this, the units, it will be, you tell me what is it going to be, 1549A, B? What
No,
is-
he's got it listed, I think he's calling it, it's in his letter. It's in the May 26th letter. So he's calling it out as 1549 for the northerly unit, and the one out that goes over to the driveway on Stonehill, that'll be 1551.
Okay.
So he's already assigned them.
Okay. Okay. Board members, any questions on this?
Just with regard to the 50% cap increase on the expansion of the use, could you just review how much the multifamily use is increasing by. As of
All
right.
right, do you have that number?
It's just on the,
Yeah, I believe it's just
Just
under the
review the-
50. It's
yeah.
almost maxed out
I think it's on the plan though.
on the architectural plan.
I think it's on the plan.
So,
It's in the legend.
No, I don't see it. Oh, yeah, it is, so it's 2,774 square feet, and allowed is 2,981, so it's slightly under.
Okay, thanks.
I know last time there was a lot of interest from the public. Is there anybody here that would like to comment or have any questions about 1549 Washington Street on the corner of Stonehill? Everybody's happy? Okay, that's good. I think the numbering, making sure that the numbering, so people on Stonehill Terrace did not have to change their address, I think that was the biggest concern I heard. And everybody's seen the plans, they're happy with this? Yes, sir. Do you want to just come up to the microphone so we can hear you?
I'm Gary Riggett. I live at 1 Stonehill Terrace. When is construction going to begin?
I don't have plans to start construction.
Probably not.
The permit's good for 2 years.
Okay. That was it.
Okay, great. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, good. So, board members, everybody good on these two? Because we're going to handle it as two. We'll do them, I think the best way to do it is to do it separately. What do you think? Separately? Okay.
Take a vote on one, and then one vote on the other.
Okay, I'll ask the applicant, do you want to, do you have anything else to add, or do you want to close the hearing? Okay. At the request of the applicant requests to close both hearings. Would somebody make a motion to close the hearings?
so move.
Moved by Drew,
Second?
second by Bob. Okay, this is just to close the hearing. All those in favor of closing the hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so carried. And let's see, tonight, it will be the 5 regular members on the, voting on this tonight. I'm sorry.
Judy's not here.
So you're comfortable voting on this one?
I'm good.
Okay, so Mark will be voting on this one. Okay. So the first one is for to approve a special permit under section 9.3 of the zoning bylaws to allow the demolition of a pre-existing non-conforming two-family dwelling and construct a new two-family dwelling within the Residence A zoning district. So that's the first thing we're dealing with. Does anybody have any conditions for this? What,
I think
I want to
just-
reference the plans, yeah.
Yeah, and they just said that all the correct permits and such. I think that was the fire department.
Yep. So that's standard conditions for things such like the fire department, life safety, and I'm just looking for the date of the plan. So that would be based on the plan with a
Feb. 1.
It's a,
revision date of March 27th, 23. And the architectural plans you are going to provide, and they are going to comply with the roof, the drainage. Anything else?
The roof area.
The roof area. Anything else on that? Bob?
No.
Okay. So, does somebody want to make a motion to that effect for case number 23-3?
So move.
Moved by Drew,
Second?
second by Bob. Any further discussion, board members? Okay. All those in favor of the special permit for demolition of the existing two-family house and construction of a new family house, two-family house. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay, now to the second part of this one. This has to do with the Water Protection Overlay District. Plans have been submitted that show that the water can be taken from the roof and put directly into the ground so that it will not cause a problem. And that's based on a plan dated, and I think the revision is, again, March 3/27/23 for this, this project. Same plan? Okay. And standard conditions on that. Anything else?
Based upon the roof area provided in the architectural plans. Exceeds 15% impervious roof area.
Yeah, that's what, so they're gonna provide the architecturals,
Going to provide architectural confirm the roof area.
and the building inspector standing there in the back, so your storm, your water retention abilities are going to meet or exceed the roof area.
Correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay, you good with that?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So, so based on the plans with a revision date of March 27th, does somebody want to make that motion for case number 23-12?
So move.
Moved by Drew,
Second?
second by Bob. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so carried.
Thank you very much.
Okay, good luck with it.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Okay. Okay. Next case is case number 23-17 for 104 Main Street. This is the old Carol's Bar on Main Street. Special permit under section 93C of the Walpole zoning bylaws for the expansion of an existing parking lot as it relates to a non-conforming use within the property's zoning district. So, is the applicant or the applicant's representative here?
We can share?
This is stamped. You guys will.
Thank you. Seem to have a lot of people here tonight. Are people here for this case? 81 Diamond, okay.
My name's Joseph Dorset, and I represent the project applicant on this file. And our firm's relationship with these folks has gone back about a decade, and we've done work ranging from simple environmental site assessments to construction of a 1-megawatt solar array. So we've worked with them extensively. And we're spearheading this particular permitting project, and we're also likely to complete the construction with our general contracting group if we get approval. If you take a look at the plan, you can see that there's a non-conforming use that's been calculated on sheet 3. And I have some calculations for that if you want to see the spreadsheet. On the plan, we also have this supplemental spreadsheet. Take a look at it, see how we got where we are. Stop here. This application has worked its way through the town without any major exceptions. We've worked with Jim Crowley extensively, and we've tweaked the plan probably a half a dozen times since submission to get it to the point where we feel like it meets the standard for the town, for the 50%. Also, you might notice if you look at the plans that we're not proposing any new curb cuts. We're going to use the existing curb cut. And what we're trying to accomplish is 13 additional parking spaces. Other things that are features here are that if you look at the tree line to the right or the north, we don't even need to disturb the existing tree line in order to get this in. Although we are offering, sure, although we are offering to put some fencing up and some landscaping as screening for some of the neighbors, and that's been discussed with them. Also, our client owns one of the properties adjoining. So there's really just a couple of neighbors here that might have an interest in this, I think. It's not going to be paved. It's going to be gravel. And we've also incorporated a pretty large infiltration area and a snow storage area. And that's pretty much where we're at.
Okay, so walk me through how 18, right now you have 18 spaces,
That's correct.
and 50% of 18 spaces would be 9 new spaces.
This space, it's based on square footage. It's a square footage calculation. So if you look at the spreadsheet, the total lot area is 33,403. The existing non-conforming area is 13,711 square feet. That's the shaded area shown on sheet 3. And then we are proposing another 6,057 square feet, which is 50% of the non-conforming use to create the 13 spaces. And that's the formula that's used under your regulations.
Okay, so you're not just taking the parking area, you're using the entire lot area.
No, the lot area is 33,403, and the non-conforming area is 13,711. If you look at the list here, Building 1, Building 2, porch ramp, concrete pad, existing patio, existing paving. In other words, the 13,711 square feet is detailed below to show you how we arrived at that number.
Okay, so the entire parcel is 33,403.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And so of that, you're saying that the existing non-conforming is, let's just say, the building and the parking area.
Yep.
That's- Okay. that's what's-
13,711, and we're proposing 50% of the 13,711.
Okay, so it's not just, and I agree that you need more parking there, so I'll just,
Yep.
so I was trying to figure out how you were
Right. It's a
calculating
pretty
this.
conservative approach, obviously, and like I said, we submitted this plan a couple of times to Mr. Crowley to look at before we officially submit it, and we tweaked and tweaked and tweaked, and I don't know if he's here, but I think he's comfortable that we made the calculation correctly. I'm pretty sure he's comfortable with that, because he was sort of involved in that.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for the explanation.
Yeah, no
Because
problem.
when I first saw 18 parking spaces, and then I was thinking, okay, you want 9 more.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're saying is, you're calculating it as the entire, everything's non-conforming.
Anything that's developed is non-conforming. Anything that's dirt is not part of the calculation.
I'm actually okay.
I also think that this area is kind of unsightly right now, and I think after we're done, it's going to look a lot better aesthetically, because it's just kind of a big hole of dirt out there, and we're going to, we're going to vegetate this detention basin, and we're going to give the neighbor to the north a fence and some landscaping. We left the landscape strip in there, and we don't even need to take the trees down between the parking area and the home to the north. We can leave the tree line. In other words, we're not taking any trees down, really, of any, at all.
Good. Don't go far. Are there any neighbors here that want to
question.
have a go ahead, Drew.
You're bringing the grade up?
Yeah, we're going to bring the grade up. If you look at sheet 2, No, hold on, I'm getting lost in my own plan.
Looks like you're carrying the grade, but it's gonna
Yeah,
carry
we're
down.
carrying
so-
that's correct. And it's going to sheet drain off into the detention basin, which is kind of horseshoe-shaped. But once again, it's not paved. There's no proposed additional impervious surface on this.
Right, and I guess, a couple questions. How much fill do you anticipate bringing in, or are you using what's on?
We're
site?
going to use some of the material from the kettle hole, because we have to excavate it to create the detention basin. And we couldn't quite balance the site. If my memory serves me correctly, we need to bring in 400 yards of
Okay.
material.
When you use something like, you said you're not gonna pave it. but
Right.
You're gonna just use like a
Dense grade.
dense grade or
Yes, sir.
something?
Yep.
No concern over dust or anything raising up and getting into the neighbors or anything? Or are you putting in control measures for that?
Well, it's all unvegetated now, of course, so I don't think it's going to be different than what it is now. And of course, as you know, dense grade packs down pretty tight. If the board had another idea of what they'd like to use, like regrind or something like that, we don't have a problem with it, you know?
Are you proposing any lighting in that?
We're not proposing lighting in there. No.
Okay. That's all the questions I had. Thank you.
Anybody else before?
Yeah, just a question, I'll make sure I'm understanding. On the right-hand side of the spreadsheet, you have the impermeable surfaces as 5,785,
Yep.
and then the two underneath those are permeable, so, and those are not paved at all, is that right?
That's correct. There's a combination snow storage area and detention basin that's shown on sheet 3 to what I would call the northeast. It's kind of horseshoe shaped, and we're going to vegetate that to stabilize it.
Okay. But that, so just so I'm clear, the non-conforming aspect of this that you're expanding is the
Yep.
parking?
And we're not doing any work in the setback either, other than offering the neighbor a fence and some additional vegetation.
Okay. I guess my question then is, like, why are the unpaved areas part of the calculation? The snow storage and the,
Well, in terms of the existing non-conforming, it's building 1,
Yep.
which is the restaurant. It's building 2, which is the accessory building. It's 427 square feet. The porch ramp, which is 292 feet. And then the concrete pad, which is 49 feet. Existing patio, 730 square feet. And existing paving, 7954. Only things that have been improved, and they happen to be non-conforming, or used as the base to calculate the 50%.
okay. So it's we're not really focused on whether it's permeable or impermeable, it's just the totality of the use?
Yeah, but I think that if you look at that 13,711 square feet, it happens to be impermeable. Buildings, concrete pads, patios, paving.
And then you have underneath permeable, like, so that total right there adds up to 13,711, or are you including the permeable surface list that's underneath that?
So
The
if you look
127.
at the sheet number, let me get to that, sheet number 2, which is the red area that shows the parking spots, all of that is permeable. It's all going to be gravel or dense grade,
Right.
okay? And you see there's like also a little grass strip in there too. So we're not increasing runoff, none of
Right.
that. I think that the existing situation out there is quite an eyesore. It's been like that for a while, and this is really going to clean that up aesthetically, if that interests anybody.
Okay. Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment on the parking lot at the Cedar House Restaurant and Bar?
You like the plans? Okay.
I haven't seen it. My name is Paul Quinn. I live at 12 Christina Drive, which is across 1A, but I would be directly across from the new parking lot. I would like to disagree. Up until 2 years ago, that was a fully treed lot. They cleared it, so they made it what it is today. He mentioned it twice, that it's ugly. Put the trees back. But, so, I mean, I've been there 30 years, I guess, and it's just, I bought next to a restaurant, so I understand, like, there's noise. We have noise from the parking lot. Friday and Saturday nights, you know, it's louder. I have to close all the windows in the house. So it's kind of, if, you know, your neighborhood, someone has like a graduation party once in a while, it goes late, goes loud. We have graduation every Friday and Saturday night. So now they want to expand on that, more into the, this is a neighborhood. You know, it's not like Conrad's at downtown, it's not like Tessie's. And I think it's a residential. I mean, it's zoned residential.
It is.
So it's, you know, if they want to put up a house there, you know, I'm all for it. But the noise that we have to put up, and now that it's not going to be paved, I think I'd rather have it paved. It's going to be dust. At some point, there's going to be dust. So I'm definitely against, I think it's a detriment to the neighborhood. My property value won't go up. Theirs will. The restaurant will. But no one in the surrounding areas, the property value is going to go up. And there's no fence in front between my house and their house, no proposed. I haven't seen it, but there's none now. He said one neighbor to the north is going to get a fence.
They're not, the parking, correct me, the parking goes right up to the, looks like to the sidewalk there.
Sidewalk. Is that, you follow zoning? There's no buffer?
No, we don't need to have a buffer on that.
All right, even on the new, but, so I'm against for an expansion of the noise, which comes. I mean, they're all nice people. Motorcycles start at night, they go to dinner, birthday party, you know, it's happy birthday, happy at 11:30. So it's not that they're bad people, but it's just an expansion of the noise, which is a detriment to the neighborhood. Like, I don't think you would allow your neighbor to have a parking lot so that they can park cars for the high school or park cars for Gillette, because it's convenient for them. So, that's all.
So I hear you. I think one of the things, what we're looking at is, we're not permitting the activity that takes place there. That's already.
Correct, but it's an expansion of the activity, just by an expansion of the parking lot. I understand that.
Yeah, interestingly,
But it's you can't tell me it's helpful to
no,
the neighborhood.
I'm not going to say that.
Tell me
it's-
that. So if it's not helpful to the neighborhood, then it must be a detriment to the neighborhood.
Or is it the same? The square footage of the restaurant is not changing.
Correct.
So, and I'll also add that because they've applied for this 50% expansion, they'll never, under this zoning bylaw, they'll never be able to expand that building, where before they could have asked for an expansion at some point, but where they're using their special permit now, this is a one-shot deal for them,
Yeah.
so.
I'm not, you know, I don't know. I think they've only been there a couple of years, and they must have done their research when they bought it, when the Patriot failed and got it. They bought what they bought. Like, I bought next to a restaurant, I bought what I bought. I've never called the police on any noise. It's not that they're bad people, it's just that it's an expanse of the noise. So, I mean, they bought what they bought, which is this much, not this much.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Yeah.
My name is Robert Quinn. I'm the brother of Paul Quinn. I do not live in Walpole, but Paul does, obviously, and his family. And he asked me to take a look over this plan and to make some comments to you this evening. I also am the son of Eileen Quinn. Eileen Quinn is a resident of New Pond Village. As you may know, is a assisted living and an independent living location just around the corner from the proposal. And and I mentioned my mother because one of the failures of this plan is there is no handicap parking. There is no handicap parking at all in this plan. There are some 30 parking spots, which my understanding is it would require 2 handicap spots for that number of locations and spaces, and none are shown on the plan, at least that I've seen online. I would note that to you. It also requires that a safe and shortest possible safe route be from the parking area into the restaurant, accessible route. Currently, the accessible route starts at the southern end of the building and goes up a long ramp up to the dining area. The parking is on the northern end of the building. So someone who needs a handicap spot has to access it from going all the way to the front of the building, across the front of the building, and then back up the ramp. That is not the shortest, most accessible location for that. Instead, it should be done through a ramp on the beside the parking area. That's where you put a ramp if you're going to have an accessible spot. As my brother mentioned, this is going to be a detriment to the neighborhood. Now, the proponent has included the patio area not only in their calculations for the 50% rule, but also for the number of spaces that they need. And I would suggest to you that this is apparently, according to their application, the first application to this board for any special permit. They never requested a special permit for the outdoor dining area that they have. And so I don't think that was an expansion of the restaurant. And as an expansion of the restaurant, it should have received a special permit from this board for that expansion. And it never did. If it never has received a permit from this board, then they can't use that, number one, for being part of their calculations for the 50% rule, and number two, they shouldn't be using that space in general for the use for the restaurant, and they shouldn't be using it for the number of spaces that they need for parking. If you look at the number of spaces, number of seats that they have in the restaurant itself, it's approximately 60. According to the zoning code, it's 4 spaces per seat, and that would be a total of 15 spaces needed. If you add on the 18 spaces that they have a license for, that the selectmen did provide them, those 18 spaces really shouldn't be used in the calculations of need, in the calculations of 50%, in the calculation of what is conforming and non-conforming. Because that is, I would suggest to you, if this board has never acted on that expansion, it should not be used in that. It is a Residence B zone, a Residence A across the street. This is a non-conforming use. You have to make a finding that I don't think you can make with respect to a special permit. The special permit findings that you must make require that you shall not have residents, employees, customers, or visitors so as to adversely affect the immediate neighborhood. You also must find that you comply with the dimensional requirements applicable to the zoning district in which the premise is located, and shall not adversely affect the character of the immediate neighborhood. I don't think this board can make those findings and allow this special permit, and I think the permit should be denied. Because it is a non-conforming use, any expansion of it must also meet those types of requirements, but also where it is proposed to be changed to encourage greater conformity, it must be to encourage greater conformity to the zoning codes. This is going to actually expand the non-conformity, and I would suggest that that is not a proper finding under the non-conforming situations. The applicant in their permit request cited section 9C3 in non-conforming uses. I would suggest that the proper section to be cited would be 9.6A, non-conforming off-street parking, which has detailed requirements for when a non-conforming lot can be either reduced or added to. And none of the requirements, none of the exceptions to the rule where it can only be, which are required, have never ever been met, nor are they even suggested. So I would ask you to take a look at section 9.6A, non-conforming off-street parking, and in particular, the sections that has the 4 exceptions, the 4 reasons for why you can expand the parking, and none of those reasons apply to this particular application. My reading of the zoning code, and this was an introduction, but I think I might be mistaken on from comments that were made, is that there's a requirement for a 20-foot buffer from the street on parking. And that is found in Section 8 of the zoning code, and in particular, subsection D, which requires at least 20 feet from all street and lot lines. Also requires screening of all in the buffer areas. This plan has no screening. It doesn't show any screen, at least the ones that was online. Possibly the plans that were submitted to you tonight may show it, but it does not show it online. There's no lighting plan, and lighting isn't important. There are lights that are there currently, and honestly, the lights don't work. And one of them was inoperable last week, and it was acting as a strobe light. Something was wrong with it, and it was to say the least, to be next to a neighbor to that light would be most disturbing. So I think for those reasons, both as a non-conforming use, as not meeting the requirements for a special permit, not meeting the requirements for an expansion of a parking lot, not meeting the requirements for a handicap parking in this plan, that the application should be denied, and I would respectfully request that you do that. Thank you.
Thank you. He brings up some points, so let's go through some of them. Handicap parking spots.
Yeah, there's a handicap parking spot. If you look at the existing conditions, sheet C1, on the southern tip of the property. Delineated handicap spot, and it is on the end of the ramp. It's actually at the right location on the ramp.
Okay. So only one handicap parking is for,
There's only one designated at this time, yes.
okay. I don't know offhand, what is the percentage of spots that they recommend for handicap parking?
I would have to research that.
Because I don't
Apologize.
I don't have that.
I have that at my fingertips.
So in this situation, that it's 31 spaces, and Mr. Crowley can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's one standard and one van accessible for 2 handicap spaces?
So, okay.
Yeah.
That's something we could remedy, obviously.
I believe the existing one is van accessible, is that correct?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
van accessible.
It's only a standard.
So, possible addition of,
Yeah, we'll have to
Not
we'll have to
another
convert a
handicap.
space to a handicap space or two, yeah.
next question that was brought up was the expansion of the outdoor dining. Mr. Crowley, good evening. Do you know the story, how that outdoor dining was created? Mr. Crowley's the zoning enforcement officer for the town.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim Crowley, Building Commissioner. From I've been here, the patio has always been there, so it's been created. I don't know when it was approved. I'd have to check. It got changed 4 years ago, where it's a limited site plan with department heads. Prior to that, it was a special permit through the zoning board. How long it's been out there, that I do not personally know. It's been in existence for as long as I've been here, the few years I have been here. I'd have to go back to when it was created, because different years trigger different exemptions from the zoning. So, again, I don't know if you know personally.
My clients, I think, owned it for about 2 years, but I can look into that. I think it's been there a while.
Yeah, if it was there, would the Patriots Tavern was there. How far back it goes, it depends if it's a 10-year, if it's gone through the planning board. If that was approved back then, that I don't have the answer off the top of my head.
Okay. And then, okay, so I think those were the 2 points, and then talking about the requirement under a special permit that it's not detrimental to the neighborhood. Mr. Quinn made that point. I think there's a few, so, also, did you work with the neighbors on, I guess it's Bullard Street and the direct abutter? I think it's listed as Randall Family Trust. did you work with them on the buffer and the fence that's going to be?
We did, and it doesn't sound like we worked with enough neighbors. But yes, we did work with them, and I don't believe they're here. And we offered this privacy fence and some landscaping.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I do see that it's set back at least 30 feet from the neighbor on Bullitt Street. Okay.
Yep.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I do want to add, this project will need to go through site plan review with the planning board as well. So some of those site features will need to be looked at during that process.
Okay. So, I think we're,
If I might
Yep.
respond to the earlier question with respect to the handicap parking?
Yeah.
Thank you. If you look at the plan, the handicap parking spot that is currently in existence, or shown, that is shown on the plan actually, encroaches on public property. Number one. Number two, that public property, as you know, has been under renovation and for the work at Route 1A, which I think will have an impact upon that particular location, most especially the access to it off of Bullitt Street or off of Route 1. I'm sure it's going to be off of Bullitt Street, I would assume. But there currently is, that spot is not usable. The state has taken over that spot, and you'll find a lot of curbing that's currently stored there. I'm sure that's going to be removed, but the reality is that I'm not sure that's going to be an appropriate spot for handicap parking when the work of the Route 1A renovations are completed. And as you can see, it actually does encroach on the public property, which would not be an appropriate way to set up handicap parking. Two spots should be in the main parking area. They should be there. They need to have a van accessible spot, and they need a ramp on that side of the building in order for safe, accessible, short access for the public. Okay, thank you very much.
okay. So I think, yeah, I didn't even notice that I guess that's the getting out of the handicap vehicle, that part of the block is actually in the public way.
Yeah, as you might know, that this is a turn of the 19th century tavern. It's been here a long time, so over the years, a lot of different things have changed. And, you know, when the new owners come in, of course, they're gonna leave things as they are unless there's a
Right.
problem, so, you know, but we can work on the handicap parking, that's no problem at all.
I think that's something we've identified tonight.
Yeah.
So, work with the handicap parking, and also, I think we need an answer on when the expansion occurred for the outside dining.
Yep.
And was that done with a special permit, or
Yep.
how was it done?
Okay.
And I think that once we get those answers, and as Patrick said, you're probably going to be going to the planning board anyways for site plan approval for this? Is that,
I thought it was a combined operation here, but I guess I'm wrong about that. I have to.
It's two different boards, yeah, so the board, zoning board, you're just looking for
Okay.
the expansion of the non-conforming.
we're just looking at the expansion of a non-conforming use, where, so, but either way, I wouldn't be comfortable having the zoning board close the hearing tonight. Do you folks agree? Do you want other
We want to
other
come back
answers?
and, try to be
You want other
responsive
answers?
to the concerns that were voiced, for sure, you know?
I think the issue that was also raised about whether should be a buffer and the location of the spaces in the front yard under section 8 should be addressed as well. It looks as though, it says in all non-resident, ground level parking facing streets or open spaces shall be screened from the sidewalk, and the open space screening may include buildings and/or landscaping.
I think what I'd like to do is get the information for the aggrieved neighbor and see if there's some way we can work together to get it to a better place, if they're willing, you know?
Yeah, I'd recommend that.
Yeah,
If
absolutely.
you can, but either way, for next time, we'll need to see your plan for handicap parking, address those issues, 96A, 8D, whether, I know that's not what you applied under, but take a look at that. and the expansion of the outdoor dining.
Okay.
Lauren, what's the next?
The next
month.
available would be July 17th.
Do you want to go for July 17th?
Be here, yeah.
That'll be a month.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so at the request of the applicant, does somebody want to make a motion? First off, does any other neighbors want to comment or have any questions on this? Okay. Yes?
I'm here tonight. I live at 11 Christina, which is across the street from 1A, and more parking is going to have an impact on Christina Drive, because again, there's no fencing up along that parking lot, and it's just going to make it really bad. If you sit down in our homes for supper, and I mean, there's a lot of people that are going into the restaurant, and they park their cars, and it faces Christina Drive. And we just have all these lights in our dining rooms, our kitchens. So could it possibly, with these renovations being done, could this be adjusted?
Yeah, I mean, I want to, if there's a way we can screen some things and make people happier, we're going to do it, absolutely.
Okay.
Not that difficult at all.
I think the applicant, is it Joseph Dorset?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's already said that he's going to work with Mr. Quinn. He's going to get some other answers for the zoning board. I think he can probably talk to you and figure out how best to make this a project that's suitable for everybody. So.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, at the request of the applicant, could we have a motion to continue the hearing until July 17th?
And then who's the voting members?
What's that?
Who are the voting members?
Voting members will be Mark.
Mark?
He'll be here in July, right?
Sure, why not?
7 PM at Town Hall.
7 PM at Town Hall, thank you, Bob. So we'll meet at 7 PM Town Hall on July 17th as a continuation of this hearing. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay. Thanks. Okay.
Who did the motion on the second?
Oh. Drew and Bob.
Check the date.
And, okay. Next case is case number 23-18, 389 North Street, requesting a variance under section 6B1 of the Walpole zoning bylaws for construction of a garage addition within the rear setback of the property. Is the applicant here?
Good evening. My name is Rich Homer, 389 North Street. Brooke is along with us here tonight. So we are seeking a variance, because that's how we fell under the variance bylaws, in order to put an addition off the rear setback, if you will. Quick backstory to the property. I was fortunate enough to be able to purchase this property in 2015. The reason and the ability to get that property was through a real estate agent that knew I was a glutton for punishment with fixing up old homes. And the previous owners of 30-plus years that lived there, I believe it was 35, would not sell it to a developer. Unfortunately, even though I was a contractor, the representation of the real estate agent knew me and knew that I wouldn't tear it down. She called me, see if I was interested in it. I took a ride by. As soon as I saw it, fell in love with it. Originally, it was going to be an investment as far as renovating it and selling it, as I have done in other parts of the town, Westwood, Canton, and so forth. Once we got into it, I'll admit, it probably should have been pushed in the hole. I'm glad that I didn't do that now, 7, 8 years later. So we were able to fix it up, restore the property there. It's a unique property in the sense that it's on a corner lot, right? The home was built in the late 1700s, probably early 1800s. Once I get into it, I realized that. We are looking to add the addition off the rear. I filed for the variance. We are really looking to keep the address at 389 North Street, is what we're really attempting to do here. We've traced the history back. Some people are into that, some people are not into that. I happen to be one that is into that. We don't want to be the owners that essentially change the address of that property, considering all we've gone through to save the property. So we're really looking to add the addition off the rear and keep 389 North Street. We've consulted with the fire department, the police department, the building commissioner here, and all seem in favor of keeping that 389 North Street address. We do take pride that it is on a historic street, and it is one of the older homes on the street there. So that's really why we're here. Raspberry Way consists of 5 homes on it, and the homes, the way it's positioned, have 2-car garages on the side of them. So we would both aesthetically conform, in my opinion, both on North Street, being the original facade, sitting on North Street, and then also on Raspberry, having our existing driveway that's always been there. During the construction, we actually found the old garage footings. Now, I say footings, it was 6 inches of concrete on some crushed stone, but we actually found those on the property line that, as you guys have the plans in front of you, you can see the existing driveway. That was the original driveway. Raspberry Way, this property, 389 North Street, used to own all of that property out back there. And I believe it was in the early 80s, it got subdeveloped and out. So that's really what we're looking to. I feel as though, and again, my opinion, that we are seeking a variance because that's what we fall under. I feel with the situation that I just mentioned, the burden of the variance may even be lowered into a special permit that we're seeking here.
How does it get lowered to a
Well,
special permit?
Because of our frontage on Raspberry. We have 156 feet of frontage on Raspberry Way. If you put our frontage on Raspberry Way, we conform through and through. The way that the property is currently set up, you can see my setbacks, right? You can see that the right setback, if you will, is 111 feet, I believe. The property in use now, that is really more of our backyard. That's how we treat it. That's where we entertain, is in our backyard. And on Raspberry Way there is really where we enter our property. We always have. The driveway's existing. That's the door we lead into. So with this garage here, we're not really changing much. As far as aesthetically with our next door neighbor, as you can see, the addition would be pulled forward, creating actually even more of a buffer, more of a privacy, more of symmetry, if you will, on Raspberry Way there.
So, as you know, a variance is a very high bar.
It's a Hail Mary, as the building commissioner would say, yes.
And, you know, there's certain requirements for a variance, and they have to do with, you know, the lot shape, the topography, you know, pre-existing a hardship, and it doesn't seem like this is meeting any of those.
Well, the hardship, again, and we may, have bestowed this upon ourselves, but the hardship would be that, the legal and binding documents that we have already set up for this, as being 389 North Street. I'm sorry, what was the other one you mentioned?
Like the topography.
So the topography of the property, as you can see there, that's North Street. I don't know if you're familiar with this area. It's a blind corner.
I drove by to make sure I knew which house we were talking
Awesome.
about.
I hope you approve of the renovations there. That's a blind corner there. And looking at, someone would say, could you put the addition off to the right side of the property there? We couldn't do that. It wouldn't, be safe pulling onto North Street. Our septic system's there. Again, it already exists on the left side. as far as our driveways there. So the topography of it, you know, poses that hardship that we can't. As you can see, I mean, the coverage of the property, we're well within the coverage. We meet all setbacks in all directions, except for that rear one, which we would essentially be a side setback on Raspberry, again, for the symmetry of Raspberry.
Board members, any questions?
I guess one for me. Do you have a Plan B right now?
Yes, the Plan B is we would change our address to Raspberry Way, and we would have this by right. And that's why I'm before you, right? I want to go the right way. I want to keep 389 North Street, you know, again, for the reasons I just said. I would imagine that, again, the police department, the fire, we consulted them. I would hope that, and that's why I'm before the board, that you're right, variances are very hard to get. But being the historic home, us saving the home, again, anyone else probably would have knocked this down, they would have moved the property, put a, you know, maybe a box colony up, and they would have had that by adjusting that land. We took pride in saving it. So that's really why I'm here. And unfortunately, there is no bylaw to save an address, right? But that's really what I'm asking for. I'm asking for us to keep 389 North Street and allow us to put this addition on with no detriment to the surrounding area, to the neighborhood at all. There was a 4-house sublot that went in across the street. That was our original barn, we found out, and that was taken down historically, and that 4-house subdevelopment went in across the street. So at least we're trying to keep some history here. Again, to your answer, that would be Plan B. I really would prefer not to go that way.
Well, that also further answers my question that, you know, there is another way that you can solve this issue if that's what you choose, so, okay. Bob, any questions? Are you good?
No, I mean, I think it's an unfortunate situation that, you know, based on the address today, that the rear yard is what it is. And as the chair mentioned, you know, the standard is very high, and it seems like the justification is so you don't want to change your address, which you know, I'm not judging that one way or the other, but that's not really a basis on which we can grant a variance, as far as I'm concerned. Others might have a different view, but on the other hand, just changing the address suddenly results in conformity, so it's kind of a and conformity is not detrimental to the neighborhood, sort of by definition, right? So it's a bit of a, you know, I don't think we're in a position to grant the variance, but it's just very unfortunate, I think, in this situation, because by changing your address, you sort of eliminate the need for the variance.
I do, yeah.
That's where I'm coming from, too. Are there any neighbors or anybody that wants to speak on this?
I guess my question would be, is there, I mean, again, we're trying to do this not just for the benefit of us, right? We're trying to do it for the safety, and for, again, to keep an historic, I mean, I see them all the time. People are always fight for these historic homes. Is there anything that we can do in order to maybe get to that level where a variance would be granted? And if not in this particular situation, I guess my question would be, you know, when is that high threshold met for a variance?
So we have issued variances, but as we've already said, the threshold for a variance is it's very high. You know, you basically ask. You're a builder. You understand. You're trying to have this board say that the zoning bylaws are going to be waived. You know, things that the whole town has agreed to, town meeting has voted for, but we're going to sit here and say that, no, you can do it. So we do grant variances, but very, very rarely.
I get, yeah, and I guess my response to that would be, like you mentioned, just by changing a number, right? Something on paper, it conforms, it's buildable. I can file for the permit and essentially get this addition off the rear. And that's why I mentioned at the beginning, in a way, you know, again, I know it's not technical and by law that I lowered it to a special permit, but looking at the practicality of it, I guess I'm just looking for maybe an off-ramp, an avenue, as I'm not versed in the full bylaws of that, where, is there another approach that we could maybe take in order to try to keep 389 North Street as the main address?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
Well, what's the consequence of not having it? that way?
Well, other than the legal documents and so on and so forth, again, we take pride in being on, again, I know it's just a number, I know it's a street, I understand that, but, I mean, taking pride in something is a good thing, right? We take pride that we're an owner in a long string of owners that have had this. We've researched the history through it, and keeping that address is maybe more important to Brooke than it is to me, but that's really why we're seeking it, and just asking for it.
I don't see how it reaches the level of a variance, at least me. So, board members, you good? Okay, anything else? At this point, do you want to close the hearing?
Yeah, I appreciate your consideration with it, though, and I understand where you guys are coming from, and you got to follow the letter of the law, so I appreciate that.
Okay, so at the request, this is just to close the hearing. At the request of the applicant, could I have a motion to close case number 23-18, 380 for 389 North Street's variance?
So move.
Moved by Drew.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
I didn't mean to
because we
jump.
haven't
I know.
closed it yet.
I
Okay.
just mean to jump on that. If you do vote, and I kind of can lead where you guys are going to go on this, does that mean that I can never apply for this variance again, or is it still open? Meaning,
So,
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
you're talking about, you want to say the 2 years?
Oh, I was gonna say the 2 years, I mean, there's also the option, you could withdraw without prejudice, or you can go forward and steer the board's decision, so.
And we could also, yeah, actually, the best move, I think you know how this vote's going to go. So,
unfortunately, yes.
yeah, unfortunate for you. But I think what you could do is, you could ask to withdraw without prejudice, and that means that if for some reason you wanted to come back in 2 years, within the 2 years' time,
Yep.
because once we vote, if we did vote
Yep.
no, you wouldn't be able to come back for 2 years on that variance request.
Great. All right, I would like to withdraw without prejudice, please.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
So, at the request of the applicant, he's requesting to withdraw without prejudice. Would somebody make a motion to approve his withdrawal without prejudice?
So moved.
Moved by Bob. Second by Drew. That's the way to do it, right? Withdraw without prejudice? Yeah, okay. Okay.
Close public hearing?
We're not do we have to close it because he's withdrawing without prejudice?
No, I don't think we have to
Yeah,
close it.
so, yeah, we don't have to close it, right?
Well, we would have to start a new public hearing if he comes back with a new application, so I think we should close the hearing
Okay.
and then,
Okay. All zoning board stuff. So, would somebody make a motion to, at the request of the applicant, to close case number 23-18?
So moved.
Moved by Drew.
second?
Second by Bob. All those in favor of, this is just to close the case. All those in favor of closing the case, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so carried. And at the request of the applicant, for case number 23-18, would somebody make a motion to allow the applicant to withdraw without prejudice?
So moved.
Moved by Mark,
Second?
second by Bob. All those in favor of allowing the applicant to withdraw without prejudice, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay. Okay, good
Thank you
luck.
very much for your consideration.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
Okay, next we have case number 23-19, 81 Diamond Street, special permit under zoning bylaws, section 93C, non-conforming uses to allow the expansion for the pre-existing non-conforming multifamily use within the limited manufacturing zone. Is the applicant here? Good evening.
That's me.
Okay.
So my name's Anthony Yeba, and I own 81 Diamond Street. And I'm basically looking to see if we can take the apartment upstairs and combine it with the apartment down, or with the unit downstairs, which was office at one point. It's, right now, we do have an approval for the whole first floor to be a lodge. So I do want to keep half the unit, half the building as a lodge. and then take the apartment upstairs, that's a legal apartment, and combine it with what was gonna be part of the lodge, and just make that one unit.
Okay, so when you say a lodge, you mean you've got a permit for a boarding house?
Yes,
Lo-
like a boarding house.
Okay.
So, I figured if we took the apartment upstairs and took 50% of the downstairs, I could just make that one apartment and just make the boarding house the right side of the building. That's the only change that I would be making.
So this property is limited in the LM zone, limited manufacturing.
Correct.
And residential use is not allowed by the zoning board in this. You have gone and you've got a permit for a
For
for
the
a lodging house, which
yes.
is allowed.
Yeah.
You talk about an apartment there. When was this apartment permitted in this?
When I bought the building, the apartment was there. I checked with the building commissioner, and it's been there for years, since the previous owner. And we checked to see if it was an legal apartment permitted, and it was. So I spoke with the commissioner, and he said as long as you take 50% of the downstairs, I was allowed to do 50% of the first floor, the downstairs. Or actually, I'm sorry, 50% of the apartment, you can expand downstairs, and that's what I did. I presented a plan that took that 50%.
So I've got concerns about the apartment. How to become an apartment in a limited manufacturing factory?
Like I said, when I bought the building, it was there. There was, we've had a tenant in there for a couple of years, 3 years. I checked, with the commissioner. We looked at it, and it was a legal apartment with the building.
So I'm not sure how we can have a legal apartment
Well,
in,
It could be that it predates the change in zoning to limit it, that at the time it was created, residential was allowed, but then subsequently the zoning was changed. That would make it legally non-conforming.
and we've dealt with that before, where it's on the applicant to show that it was, that was, because we're just being told, because I've always known that as a factory building. And I don't know when it became an apartment, I don't live there. I think we have plenty of people that do live there. But my question is, where'd this apartment come from? And
When I went down to the building department, we checked the history of it, and commissioners here, we looked at the permit that was pulled to make it an apartment, and I don't have the answer to that. When I bought the building, it was an apartment. I've had a tenant in there for 3 years.
Okay, Mr. Crowley's here tonight, so let's.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Sorry. So I'm just a little confused, and maybe we know the answer to this. So is it a lodging house now?
No,
Or it just has an approval for a lodging
It has
house?
an approval for a lodging house. And I could keep it a lodging house, but for me, I just think it makes more sense the way the lodging house is set up to combine the apartment upstairs with the bottom part, because there's a staircase that comes down and goes right into that unit. And it just makes more sense, just make it a big apartment and then just make the lodging house, because then there's like a common area hallway that breaks the building up and then goes into the other part of the lodging house. So I thought it made more sense to just combine the legal apartment with the space below and then do the other part of the building as the lodging house.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so there'd be no commercial left there, it would be a fully residential?
You still have.
Because I just don't see, there's very limited information on here, so
Yeah.
I don't really.
Okay, so basically, we could leave it as the lodging house,
Yeah,
and you
but
have the legal
Is there
apartment.
still commercial part of the property that's not shown on these plans? Or would it just be a?
There's, below the way it's set up, there's a commercial part in the basement,
Yep.
which goes out to the loading dock in the back of the building. Then there's another steel building off to the side that houses our stone fabrication company.
Okay. Mr. Crowley, do you want, you want to answer my question about this, this apartment? Because I think that's, I want to know where this apartment came from, and I think the board wants to know where this apartment came from.
Yeah, so when we first came across this, the building originally is factory in the basement, office building across the front with an apartment above. I've looked through the files from our point of view to look for when this was created. We can't find it. I've been told that it was put there as a caretaker's apartment, but I can't find anything on that either. As to permits on it that was approved, we don't have any. It would be up to Mr. Yaba to prove that it was in existence for the last 10 years. If he can prove that, then under Mass General Law 48, Section 7, if something has been created in 10 years and the use is allowed to be kept there. So he'd have to prove that that apartment has been there for 10 years. If we find something that says it was caretaker's apartment, then he has to prove when the caretaker ended and the apartment took over. But if it's over 10 years, I can't speak to that. I don't know if some of the neighbours who live there longer can speak to that. But it'd be up to Mr. Yaba to prove that that apartment has been rented or leased, or the previous owner can give him some information that proves it's over 10 years been there. If it's been created over 10 years, by mass law, he's allowed to keep it and keep the use. But I can't find any record of it. It's on our assessors as an apartment, but I can't find any official record.
I thought there was a permit that we saw in the file.
Not for that, no.
No? Okay, I thought.
I'm still looking.
Okay,
Okay, well, thank you for that explanation, Mr. Crowley.
thank you.
So, I think before we move forward on this, I think it's on you to show that that is a legal apartment in a limited manufacturing building in a
Okay.
zoning area.
So basically, I've owned a building for about, I think about 5 years. And the owner previous to me owned a building for like 30 years. And the apartment was up there. He had one of his family members or something living upstairs. So do I just need to talk to the previous owner to find out, you know, because I mean, he, like I said, he owned the building for so many years, and
So one of the things
that
I'm not-
apartment was there.
So I'm not going to give you legal advice, but I will say that it's on you to find out, you know, the documentation to show, and you can start with Mr. Crowley, show that, yes, this was an apartment for the past, you know, past 10 years, and it was occupied as an apartment. And there are ways that, you know, through records that it can be shown.
Okay.
Because without that, we're not going any place on this.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, we could leave it as the lodge and continue.
Yeah, I
with
mean,
the
if
lodge.
you've got a permit for a lodge, that didn't go through the zoning board. Mr. Crowley, where'd that go through?
So lodging houses are allowed as of right. So again, Mr. Yaba can build it. He can't use it until he gets approved by the select board. His license comes through the select board. So if he decides to build it, I recommend we go license first, then build. He's chosen to build. He's going to have to go to the select board and get approved from the health board to get the lodging house and get the license. If they deny the license, then they can't have a lodging house there. It's up to the select board to issue, and we have 2 in town. Both were issued years ago, but it's through the select board. In the building side of it, it's in our zoning to allow it, so we can't have to give them a permit to build it. It's up to Mr. Yaba to get the license from the select board for approval to actually start using it.
Okay. So it's the select board, not the zoning board, that approves boarding houses?
Yeah, this is as a right use, but the license on lodging houses in Massachusetts comes from the select board of every town.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. Okay.
Okay, so I'll work on getting the timeline on the apartment. I mean, I can do that.
Okay. We have a lot of people here tonight, so I'm going to open it up for comments from the public or neighbors. Does somebody want to comment on this? Yes.
I will.
Okay. Yep.
I lived on the street 55 years, the apartment was.
Would you please just identify yourself for the record? You can have a
Jean
seat.
St. George.
Mr. Yarborough, you can have a seat.
I live on Diamond Street. I've lived there 55 years, and the apartment
pull the
was
microphone
not there.
down? Thank
The apartment was not there. I can put my hand on the Bible and say that.
Okay.
It was not there. I don't know, baffles me that you would put a lodging there. How many units would be there? How many people would live there? You know, that adds traffic to the street. We already have a church, we have a school, we have senior housing there, and we have a terrible traffic problem. So you're going to add to that. So in other words, we should speak to the selectmen about that?
I think that's what we found out tonight, that
Yeah.
lodging houses do not go through the zoning board. That's something that's permitted by the select board, so.
Well, it's news to me that he even has a permit to put lodging there.
He doesn't have a permit.
Well-
He can build, what we just heard from the building commissioner, that you're allowed to,
Right.
in that limited manufacturing zone, build a lodging house. Getting a permit's a different story.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Yes?
My name's Maggie Tironi. I'm also a resident of Diamond Street. And I guess I'm a little concerned about going forth with the apartment as well, because since this building has been purchased, it's not been good for our neighborhood. I don't know if this board's aware, but we had to come back to Town Hall when Mr. Yeba first purchased the property because he was storing demolished cars, and tow trucks were coming up and down our street at all hours of the night. And I guess, much like Jean, I have a question about the lodging house, what the future plans are. And then, if you've been by the building at all, since it's been under Mr. Yuba's control, it's become an eyesore for the neighborhood. There's some trees have been taken down. It always looks like it's under construction. And I guess one of the questions that I have, I don't know if it's for you or for Mr. Crowley, but has there been any issues with the property? Has there been any violations on this property? I personally have tried to contact Mr. Yeba myself and don't receive return calls. And I just feel that we need to stop this at every step that we can, because he really has not been a good neighbor, and he hasn't been responsive to any of the neighbors who have contacted him. And I guess I'd like to know if there's any buffers or setbacks or parking requirements once this moves on, so.
Okay. So, I think you can talk to Mr. Crowley about if there's been any building violations, but we haven't heard of any building violations here that have been brought to the zoning board. There is a buffer on, as you look at the property from Diamond Street, there's a buffer 40, Mr. Crowley, do you want to comment on what that buffer is?
Yes, there's an existing buffer from a previous zoning board decision. The entire property is surrounded with a 40-foot buffer, no parking, no deliveries, no trucks in that 40-foot buffer, completely surrounding the building. The left side is not so bad because there's actually a river there, so the 40-foot includes that river, so it's not realistically on the property. The main buffer is at the rear of the property, down at the end of the property, and on the right-hand side, which is usually where most of the parking happens, there's a 40-foot buffer there.
And there should be no parking according to the zoning, previously
no
issued
parking
zoning
allowed there.
decision.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so that's from way back, it wasn't this board, I don't ever, well,
I believe
the
it's back
people
in
sitting
the
here.
1977, where it came from.
Okay. Okay, I'll take a look at that decision, that'll be interesting. Okay, thank you for the explanation. Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay. So, Mr. Yeba, how long do you think it'll take you to get this information about,
About the apartment?
the apartment, yeah?
I'm going to call the previous owner and see what I can find through him. So probably, I would say for the next hearing. Yeah, I do want to do the apartment, combine it with, I do want to stay on that course of combining the two, the apartment and the unit below. But if that doesn't go through, then I would basically just do not the boarding house, the lodge. I would just keep that path and go that route, since that's what I'm pretty much allowed to do outside of that permit that I need to get. So, but the reason why I want to do the apartment, because it would reduce the amount of, I mean, because when I researched it, what I could do on that property was I could put a church in there, I could put a motel. I think there was a motel was one of the options. So I chose to go with the lodge. But now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying not to have a lot of people in that building, where if I can combine the apartment upstairs with the unit below, that would be one family that would be renting that. And then the other half of the unit would probably be another family. But if there's a problem with the apartment being combined and I have to go the route of the boarding house, then that's what I'll do. I have to do something there.
But you're talking multiple apartments. You only can do one. You have one apartment that you want to expand. That's what you're
One
talking
apartment that I want to expand, but then you would have the other half of the building would be the boarding house, or the lodge.
Okay.
But if I take the unit below the apartment, it would be a smaller lodge, because you'd be making one apartment, just one family. But if I left it with the lodge, then you've got another 3 bedrooms that you'd be housing people on that side.
Okay, yeah, it's, I'm not even sure that you have a legal apartment in there right now.
Well, that's
what you're gonna find out.
That's what I'm gonna find out.
Okay. Yes.
From
Yeah.
neighbors, they don't do anything, correct?
Hold on, why don't you come up and just
Sure. Just to clarify, but,
speak?
but yeah, comments from the neighbors seem to not really do anything right now since it goes through the select board, is that correct?
No.
Comments don't
For the
do
lodging
anything.
house, yes.
For the lodging
For
house.
the lodging house, okay. I have a few
Yeah,
comments.
would you just identify yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name's Kyle Forte, been in Walpole on Old Diamond Street for about 5 years now. I live there with my wife, and just a few comments on it. So I don't have anything, you seem like a nice guy. Seems like a great opportunity to expand for you financially, but for us neighbors, I mean, look at how many people are here right now from the neighborhood. I don't feel like this change is going to positively affect any of us. And as far as I understand it, the character of the neighborhood, I mean, we're pretty tight-knit. I mean, we all kind of know each other here. And if there was a lodging house, I've done some research on lodging houses, and the data does not suggest that it's going to be a positive impact from a health, safety, crime standpoint. I've actually, I go around that area all the time, and I've made a few observations over the last few years. Seen things in the parking lot and on the street around the neighborhood. Not sure where they're coming from, but they are on that property in that parking lot right there, as well as all around it. There are fireworks, condoms, beer cans. I walk my dog around that area, and I have kids that will be coming into my life soon. My wife and I go to Blessed Sacrament Church. We walk down that street to get there. It's kind of, I had to convince my wife to move into that area, and now she loves it. You know, it's a great area. The neighbors are great. But there are some concerns. I'm not sure if we would really find it to be as attractive if that area was further developed to be not just what it is today. I didn't even know there was an apartment in there, but now it kind of makes sense. But if there were more, a lodging house or a rooming house, you know, we would definitely be concerned about sending our kids to Blessed Sacrament. There's a church across the street. It's a pretty quiet area, but also the traffic. You know, there are children that are all around that area. The fact that there were condoms and beer cans in that lot, I would hate to see what, you know, again, the research if you do on rooming houses and what that brings to a community. I don't think that would sit well with my wife and I as residents here. I've spoken with many of my neighbors, and I think that we all agree we're pretty tight-knit, and the change is not desired by just about all of us. So just wanted to say that and appreciate the time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Say something to you.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Mary Lazdowski. I live at 45 Diamond, right across from the parking lot of the church. And we have lots of things going on in Diamond Street right there. We have all the kids. We have like people come to church every Sunday. We have the elderly walking down. I'm like right there on the street. You know what I mean? I see everything, watch everything. Sure, I've been there 24 years. So many times my husband and I wake up, see cars over in the parking lot doing drug deals. You know that clothes thing? People throw the kids in there, get the clothes out, and then put them in the car and take off. We've seen that so many, many times. And You know, you walk up the street, the elderly are right there. Why would we want a boarding house with people that smoke cigarettes and
Hold on.
all this stuff on our street? I think we have enough.
So first, no, first off, she's addressing the board, not you. And we're not talking about a boarding house here tonight. We're talking about what's before the zoning board is an apartment.
Apartment.
Right.
Goes with the lodge.
No, it doesn't go with the lodge. That's separate. First off, I hear everything you're saying.
Okay.
Okay, but what we're looking at is specifically what the applicant has applied for, which is to have a expansion of an apartment, and
That's fine. There's been an apartment there since I've lived there, but it's always nice and quiet, you know what I mean? It's not a lot of people. When I had the machine shop downstairs for years, there was always somebody living up there, but they were quiet, you know what I mean? Now
Okay.
it's a lot different. Since the granite place got there, it was
you
a big
just helped his
mess.
case.
Huh?
So,
Did I?
so, yeah, maybe you can
Well,
help
for
him.
that, but, I mean, I don't,
So,
I just
okay.
don't like the boarding
You
house
don't-
thing, you know what I mean?
You talk to the board. Okay, you want to address things? Yeah. You can address her comments to the board.
Okay, I mean, as far as the gentleman with the, you know, the beer cans or all that type of thing, I don't even know where that's coming from. There is a parking lot across the street that goes with the property. What people do in that, you know, at night, I have no idea. I don't live on the street. I can't control that. If I know there's a house somewhere in there that there's some stuff going on, because one of my employees, his husband's on the police department, with the police department, and I guess there's some kind of activity on that street, has nothing to do with my property. So what's going on there? I've heard of that, because I have an apartment right across the street at 71 Diamond that I'm renovating. I'm putting my own mother in that apartment. So, and she's moving up from Florida, and somebody told me that there was some sort of activity going on that street. So, I mean, I'm concerned about it too, but please don't pin this on me. I'm not, you know, my people aren't putting condoms and beer cans in parking lots. I mean, I've never seen it myself, but it's not in my parking lot. But like I said, my own family, my own mother is moving in across the street, so I want to clean it up. That's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to take an apartment, put one family in that apartment. And as far as the lodging house, you know, you're not going to have multiple people. You know, you could get one family that has multiple, like parents or whatever, that could move into that lodging house. I did ask that question to the commissioner. So I'm trying to do it to where it's not like a hotel. I'm trying to do it to where it's one apartment on one side and basically one apartment on the other side, but it's a lodge that could have, you know, 3 family members living in there, all in the same family. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to clean the building up. I'm trying to finish the building. It's been sitting like that for years because I've had to go through these meetings. I mean, I can't just do it. I can't, you know, turn it into a clean apartment building until I get the approvals. And that's what I'm trying to do. I don't want it looking like that either. I'm trying to finish it.
And this is the first time you've been to the zoning board, so
yeah.
I just wanted to open it up to people's comments, for comments. Does anybody else have any comments on this case?
Can I just ask a question? So it
You just come to the microphone so everybody can hear you. Thanks.
So it was just stated that, you know, he doesn't know where it's coming from, but yet when you go by those parking lots, it says monitored 24 hours by cameras. So can't we look at the camera footage and see who's doing that?
That sign's been on the building since I bought it. I don't know that it's ever been monitored. We're not monitoring it. Right now, the only activity in that building is the stone shop down in the bottom, in the steel building, and the tool shop that's been there for years, and he's clean. I mean, he's been there for years.
Okay, so for the next hearing, you're going to provide documentation and you can show it to the building inspector in advance, probably to make sure that it's going to be sufficient to show that it is a legal apartment in there. Because without that, this really doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, I misunderstood him. When I went down there to come to this hearing, that was one of the things I thought we looked at, was that apartment, and I must have misunderstood him. because I didn't think we would proceed to this hearing if it wasn't legal. So, I don't know, I must have misunderstood. But I'll look into it. This woman just said that that apartment's been there for years, and I agree with her, because ever since Milton Florist, who was the previous owner, has owned the building, and he owned it for 20 years. I don't know however long that machine shop's been there. There's been somebody living up there. So I know that for a fact. I can get that information.
Yeah, there's a way to show that somebody did live there with documents and things
Sure.
like that. Yeah. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll continue this until the 17th of July. Is that good? Okay. Can I have a motion to continue until July 17th, 7 o'clock here at Town Hall?
So moved.
Moved by Drew.
Second.
Second by Dave. Bob, you good with that?
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. I didn't read the comments, but, okay. Next one, on the agenda, we have case number 2320 Highland Street. Is that?
Forsythia.
Oh, you know what, I think that you got in, that was an old agenda, I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's
Forsythia?
41
Okay.
Forsythia.
Okay. So this is for tonight's hearing. Notice is hereby given, the Zoning Board of Appeals, the Town of Walpole will hold a public hearing in the main meeting room on Wednesday, June 7th at 7 PM on the application of Lisa Marie Bastintelli, case number 23-20, with respect to property located at 41 Forsythia Drive within the Residence A zoning district. Application is for a variance under Section 6B1 of the zoning bylaws to allow reconfiguration of a previously approved in-law suite. Zoning board case number 2220 would be within the side yard setback. All those are invited to attend. Okay. Hi, we met you before. Okay, so let us get this. Okay. Do you want to explain what you're proposing to do and why you need a variance?
There's a roof we ended up putting on the deck, and the deck got moved because the stairs didn't fit in. It was a safety thing as a GC. Way the stairs were working out, they would go off the outside end, back in towards the house, then onto a landing, then down by the house. So the time and effort was a long time, and if there was a fire, you're bringing me, because I'm gonna live there with my wife, back into towards the house. So if you look at the as-built, we moved the elevator in, which is really a lift, and we moved the deck back to the corner, and we have a set of stairs, 11 stairs going down. And accidentally, the framers framed the roof on it because they were also looking at the old plans which had the lift out there, and they just framed it. And what we have found as a safety thing, the rain, and I haven't seen snow there yet, but the rain and everything else that whips down the back of that house. Remember, we're up second floor height, is unbelievable. So the roof is protecting that entrance, and that's our means of escape if a fire breaks out in her house. I have no other means because the lift is electric, and you're not gonna catch me on a lift. I'm going down those stairs. So.
Okay, that's
So safety-wise,
Safety-wise, it's a lot better.
it is a lot better.
So, there was a plan that was approved by the zoning board for this in-law suite, and it was shown what the setback was gonna be, and there was gonna be a deck, it wasn't gonna have a roof, and you didn't follow it, right?
Right.
Okay. So now you're asking for a variance? and-
Yes.
For the roof on
The roof on the
That
deck.
nobody can see except for the train.
And the deck is now closer to the property line than approved, is that correct?
A little bit, because we shrunk it, it's not, it's only 8 feet out.
So we've talked about variances tonight, and one of the things, this is clearly a case of self-imposed hardship. This is not a hardship that has anything to do with something
Well,
that
the
deals with
cost.
a lot.
It's now a
what?
financial, now it's a financial
Financial.
hardship for me to take the roof off.
Okay.
It's also a safety issue for an elderly couple without a roof. Now, looking at it, the roof is a safety for snow. I'm a nurse, so if I'm on call and it snows and something happens, at least the roof is protecting his means of egress. And nobody can see it except for the train that goes by.
No, that's not
It's-
the issue. The issue is that it doesn't conform with the zoning bylaws of the town at this point.
So that's why we're here, asking
Yeah.
for a variance.
Right, and as we've already talked about tonight, the bar for a variance is quite high. Anybody else on that? You had a set of plans, and, we worked with you. I think you said what you were gonna do, and then you did something different. And now you're coming back.
Well, the only reason it happened was because the stairs didn't fit. They ended up in the opening. That's our means to get out front. So that's why everything got pushed back that way, because this deck went underneath the kitchen window. This deck got pushed back 3 feet to the corner of the house. But the original deck went from 3 feet in, right at the door, and went to the kitchen sink window, then the stairs, and that's the problem. It didn't fit.
Yeah.
As the plans were drawn to show.
Drew, any questions? Dave?
I'll take that, I'll take the roof down.
And-
It's a cost, it's a hardship, because we paid for it in the point of when the framers called for the lumber.
And the deck is now not as approved. It's too close to the property line now. So.
By what, a foot and a half? Because it's only 8 feet out. And it could be,
So, I guess to answer that, I think what triggers the issue is the roof, really. So a deck can be within 4 feet into the setback. But adding the roof to it is kind of where this issue lies.
So the
So
deck doesn't have to be moved if the roof comes off.
correct.
Mr. Crowley, is that true? Deck doesn't have to be moved if the roof comes off?
Yeah, so you're allowed as a primary egress, if you have a deck, you're allowed to go 4 feet into a setback using as one of your primary egresses, which is out the in-law. The roof is the issue. The roof is what triggered why we're here. We give them an option of either remove the roof or apply for a variance, and they're applying for the variance to keep the roof.
Okay.
Someone from the public?
Yeah, sure. Do you want to make a comment?
Yes, good evening.
Yeah, just come to the microphone, please.
Good evening. My name's Paul Marcha. I also live at the address. Lisa is my wife. How is that not considered a hardship? If an elderly couple, if the roof is removed and we have snow and they have to get out if there's an emergency, how is that not a hardship if they're going out the back porch in the snow on the deck?
The hardship is that you're asking for relief because you put a roof on something that shouldn't have had a roof.
I understand your point of view, but they're asking for a variance, and you say that falls under a hardship. How is that not a hardship, as falling under safety?
It's a self-imposed hardship.
So it's not a hardship, you're saying, at all?
Oh, what is the hardship?
It's a safety reason.
No, that's a safety. The hardship has to do with why it should be granted. That doesn't have to do with the shape of the lot, the topography, some unusual condition. The hardship is that you put a roof on something that you shouldn't have put a roof on.
So in the original plans, because the deck's the same, so everything falls under code, if the original plans had a roof and got approved, that would not have been an issue.
It wouldn't have been approved because it's in the setback. It's too close to the
understand
back
what that
property
means.
line.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do you have anything else, or do you want to close the hearing?
Do I want to close it? I need an answer, yes or no.
Yeah, I'll tell you, we've already talked about variances. Variance is a hard thing to get, and at least in my opinion, this doesn't rise to the level of a variance. So, no, you could do as the other gentleman did, he withdrew without prejudice, or you can close the, you can close the hearing and the board can vote on it.
Oh, all right, and close the hearing and
Well,
let
what
the...
happens if we, wait a minute, what happens if we, without prejudice?
You can bring it up again later.
Yeah, you can bring it up. Yeah, Mr. Crowley.
In violation.
Yeah, so the applicant has two choices, the variance, or if they withdraw without prejudice, the roof's still coming down because we're going to be sending out violations because they exceeded the permit and they're also breaking zoning. So the options are either be granted a variance. If they're not granted a variance, then the roof is coming off. If they withdraw without prejudice, we're going to move forward to having taken the roof off. So it's either you approve a variance to keep the roof, if they don't approve the variance, or to withdraw, the roof is coming down.
Right.
So, I guess close it.
Okay. Okay, at the request of the applicant, could I have a motion to close the hearing for case number 2320?
So move.
Moved by Drew, second by Dave. Okay, all those in favor of, this is just to close the hearing, of closing the hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
In voting on this, Tim, you want to vote on this one tonight? Sorry, Mark. Voting on this will be the regular members and Tim Hegler. Okay, so we have before us a request for a variance for the previously approved in-law suite. Anybody want any conditions on this? I don't see the need. Okay. Would somebody make a motion to, we'll do this in the affirmative, to approve their request for a variance? Everybody understand when I say in the affirmative? So if you're in favor of granting it, you'd vote yes, and if you're not in favor, you'd vote no. So could I have a motion in the affirmative?
So moved.
Okay, moved by Dave. Somebody want to second it? Okay.
No.
Okay.
You make a motion to,
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to deny the variance.
Okay. We have a motion to deny the variance, and that's made by Bob. So that would be, this motion is actually to deny it, so if you want to deny it, you would vote in favor of denial of the variance. So Bob's made the motion. Somebody want to second it?
Second.
Second by Tim. Okay. Okay. All those in favor of denying the variance, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay, 5-0 for denial of the variance.
Thank you.
Okay, good night. Okay, next we have is the minutes from previous meetings, and we have got the minutes just recently.
I'll go. So you just talk about it after the minutes. Okay.
What?
And this decision's already been filed, it was filed, Burns Ave.
Yep.
Burns Ave is
Filed on the 17th.
good, well before our deadline. Thank you, Bob.
Well done.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Bob,
Bob.
for getting that. Okay. Bob, do you have any comments on the minutes?
Yeah, on the May 15th. On page 5, about a third of the way down, it says, Mr. Fitzgerald said the language in the bylaw was not clear and needed more clarification. I think what I said was that the bylaw clearly included tank in the definition of structure and did not distinguish based on size. And then on page 6, I just wanted clarification on the third paragraph down. It says, Mr. Lee asked the applicant if he would consider removing the proposed 36-inch cased-in opening between the in-law suite and the breezeway. Mr. Christensen agreed to remove the 36-inch cased opening. I just want to make sure that that was correct. I thought the idea was to remove any door in that area, but to have a cased-in opening was fine as long as it was allowed to remain open, so.
That's correct. It should not be, it should not be a door. It should be it should be a case.
Just the case.
And the applicant agreed to that.
Yeah, so I think maybe after removing the words like the door in or something like that would be, just to clarify that.
Yep.
And that's all I had on that.
A lot of notes in this one.
Okay,
I
anybody
didn't
else?
have, I didn't have any comments on the other side.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. So let's see, the first one, I think for May 15th, everybody was here for that. So does somebody want to make a motion to approve the minutes of May 15th?
So
Moved by Drew, second by Mark.
second.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes of May 15th, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so carried. Okay, we also have the minutes of May 8th, which was about Burns Ave and the waivers. So does anybody have any comments or questions about that? Okay. Dave, you won't be voting on this, but everybody else can vote on it. Somebody want to make a motion to approve the minutes of May 8th?
So moved.
Moved by Drew,
Second?
second by Bob. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the minutes of May 8th, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so carried. Does anybody have anything else for us? Patrick? Yes. you've
I
got a few
have
things.
the news of telling you. So June 26th, you'll notice on your agenda is marked as 40B cases. I think last meeting I did notify we had HAC's ruling regarding Pinnacle Point, Darwin Commons. HAC did not rule in our favor, and in doing so, essentially, it remands the case back, but in a way, it almost just kind of like continues it. So it's not so much a new case; it's a continuation of where we left off once the board invoked safe harbor last year. So once the HAC issued their ruling on May 11th, that effectively started the public hearing clock, which already started back. I think May 25th was for one of the cases, June 1st was for the other. That clock had been frozen once the board had invoked safe harbor, and that started that whole legal process. So the interlocutory appeal, essentially all the time that is told gets back to the board. So in a sense, the clock is going on those two cases. So basically, we have them scheduled for June 26th, as well as the 1015 East Street Gilmore's project has applied in the interim as well. So it's a big night, obviously. In terms of scheduling, talked about it with John, having them staggered in 30-minute intervals possibly opens up to, at least if we have crowds, it can be a little bit more measured in that regard. So that's the news, I guess, for the 26th, is that we have essentially 3 40B cases coming back. Obviously, the Gilmore's project is done under a local initiative program, which is a friendly 40B. So there was we're aware of it, so to speak. There's a MOU with the select board on that one. So that's a little bit of a different project, but it still follows the same exact regulatory process as any other comprehensive permit. In addition to those 3, kind of a recent development as of last week, the applicants for Cedar Edge, Cedar Crossing are proposing a substantial modification to the project. This was something that kind of developed, like I said, last week. Essentially, they are not going to go forward with the typical process of submitting a letter to the board to determine if it's substantial. They are relinquishing that option and just going forward saying it is substantial. In doing so, that means we have to open a hearing within 30 days. I did talk to David Hale, the applicant, and kind of address that as in, hey, it's a little bit of an issue from an advertising standpoint in terms of scheduling. He did agree that was an issue for him as well, and I think I have a written kind of confirmation from him that he would forego the 30-day window and be amendable to opening up on July 17th for that project. So that is I guess a 4th project that is coming back. That modification itself is to do with the ownership side of the project. They're proposing to modify the use as well as the occupancy type. So
more to follow on the Cedar Edge project.
Yeah. Yes.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you for the update. So I think it makes sense what Pat talked about is when are we going to have those 340? What's the date of that?
So that's June 26th.
June 26th. So
that's a Monday.
It's a Monday, and what we're going to do is we're going to basically reopen Pinnacle and Darwin. It's not even reopen. They've been basically continued to this point.
They've been continuing since the 11th. So the way to look at it as
Restart.
The clock has been going that 180 days. I think we already factored the 180th day for those projects, and I kind of went over this with Town Council George Pucci, would be effectively November 6th, and I think the 180th day for Gilmore's is like December 18th or something like that. So that's to keep in your back of your mind, knowing that 100-day public hearing window, that is going.
So, but I like the idea of 7 o'clock. We'll, I don't know, we can do Pinnacle.
We actually have it. So Pinnacle is at 7, Darwin is at 7:30, and Gilmore's is at 8.
Yeah, and that way, basically, it's a reintroduction, update where we're at on these projects, and moves them along, and there will be a lot of interest from all of those.
This is something Lauren kind of went over as well. I think it might be helpful just obviously getting all these projects back again, kind of setting up a timeline and schedule of kind of how we approach each meeting. And obviously it's up to the board how you want to go about it, if you want to approach it more organically or if you want to kind of focus on certain elements of a project each meeting.
We used to call it it's a big sheet. It's a horse blanket where, no, that's what it's, in construction you use them, right?
Yeah.
And we'll have meetings where we'll look at, engineering, we'll look at stormwater, whatever.
Yep.
But yes, we need to do that because at this point, we don't have the full 180 days because we've already used up some of that on Darwin and Pinnacle. So
I can get that to the board, just as my draft to the board on that before the meeting.
That'll keep us more focused on the issues we have to do because November's gonna be here before you know it. I mean, so it always is. So. Okay, put it on your 40B steps, and we got a lot in front of us.
I'm always the bearer of good news.
I actually have one question for you. How close are we to safe harbor?
So,
So, when will the?
so when we looked at the Gilmore's project overall, initially when they approached the town, we kind of looked at where our SHI numbers were with, including the Summer Street project. Obviously, that's kind of in limbo right now due to the fact that no building permits have been pulled within a year under DHCD's rules and regulations. Those units get removed until a building permit gets issued, and then there's another 18 months until the CO. Regardless, factoring in Summer Street's building permits, and factoring in the eventual Gilmore's project, we'd be over 10%. I think the number, it came out to like 10.5, and that's looking at the 2020 census. If you go on DHCD's website, it goes over SHI right now, they're only running off the 2010 census right now. I don't know why. I think they're looking at what's called year-round housing units, and they're still, 3 years after the fact, calculating that number. But we know how many housing units we have, and I don't think there's a lot of vacation homes in Walpole. So 10,042 is kind of our denominator for total housing units. And so that's kind of where we're at. I think that, everything that's kind of before the board right now would put us over that 10% threshold. The one concern is looking into the Summer Street project. Obviously, that did initially give the board a 2-year safe harbor because of the valid housing production plan. If a building permits are pulled for that project, that allows those units to get back on. After talking to town council, we probably would approach DHCD about trying to get back the safe harbor time that we did lose. So it's kind of a unique situation. So we appealed, obviously, the decision with Pinnacle and Darwin that effectively prevented those projects from going forward. But we essentially lost a year of our 2 years as of April 2022. So I think if, let's go in a hypothetical scenario, say Summer Street gets through the process and they're able to pull building permits by the end of the summer, and those units can be put back on the subsidized housing inventory, I would go through the process of approaching DHCD about trying to reinstitute safe harbor, which would at least hopefully give us back the time that we lost. I can't say that for sure, but I think that's the process that we're going to do. And then likewise, obviously, if Gilmore's, that project, if that goes, following just the standard timeline, if it gets done by December, as soon as that project is, if it's approved and recorded, as soon as those units are recorded, then we'd go through the process of adding them to the inventory. So I guess when you want to think about new 40Bs, what we have right now, and I'm sure everyone is familiar by now, is if someone wants to do something, they would approach a subsidized housing authority about getting a project eligibility letter. So in that situation, the town would be notified from like a Mass Housing or a DHCD that, so-and-so is, proposing 40 units over here, and then the town has the opportunity to respond with comments. And then the subsidized housing authority usually takes about 3 months or so to kind of issue their PEL. So that variable is always kind of like a potential risk or a potential concern of possibly happening.
Because once they could file an application when we're not in safe harbor, and even if we subsequently come into safe harbor, those applications still have to be heard, right? It's not like we
Correct. So everything that's kind of happened right now, so obviously Darwin, Pinnacle, if anyone remembers Neponset Village off Pleasant Street, once that decision is given back by HAC, that still has to go forward. Everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for the update on that. Anybody have anything else? Tim?
You're going to stagger that next meeting on the 26th? Does it get advertised that way?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Just because logistically, I can see 1 million people out here, and
That's why.
where are they all going to hang out while we're doing the first one or the second one?
Yeah, that's why we want to do it that way.
They can hang out in town hall, in the parking lot, whatever, but the idea would be that, we want to have everybody to hear And with a half hour, it's really gonna be pretty much an introduction and then explanation of how we're gonna move forward on these, so,
So it's on, and the applicants will know they got a half hour
yes.
to make their case.
And one applicant is the first two cases.
Right. So probably not a ton of time for public comment.
There'll be, I'll make sure we have time for public
Okay.
comment, because people are here, you know.
Right, but if you run into the half hour, like, then you want to move on to the
Right.
next one.
Well, you
that's-
can't, I mean, so I'm sorry, you can technically go over, like, all the ones we
Right,
had
right.
tonight started at 7.
Okay, that's what I didn't understand.
But
Okay.
people won't be here for 3 hours, they might be here
Yeah,
for
they-
2 hours or 1 hour.
And everyone's told to come at a, like, staggered time.
Yep.
But I think we should respect people's time on that. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, really what it is, these are for Darwin and Pinnacle, it's gonna be almost like a reintroduction, and then Gilmore's, it'll be the first introduction to what's going on.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for that update. Anything else? Okay. Does somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Okay.
Second.
Made by Tim, second by Dave. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Good night, everybody.
Good?